welcome everyone. Nice to have you all here and all online and joining us again for another webinar that we have. And we're very privileged today to welcome the team from GDJ Advertising in North Melbourne. GDJ are a boutique full-service agency that have been working with us and a number of other clients that we associate with over the years. I'm Rob Douglas. I'm the Executive Director of Australian Owner Manager. We run development programs for the owners and senior managers within private businesses. Within our webinar series today, our objective is just to give you a bit of an update on some of the trends that we're seeing from a media and consumer advertising perspective. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass over to the team at GDJ, who are going to share a few slides, and they've got various experts across the business, both in media, digital advertising and so forth, that are going to give you a bit of an update on the landscape out there. So over to you.
Thanks, Rob. That's a lovely introduction. Yes, we're from GDJ in North Melbourne, and we've got a team of panelists, I suppose you'd call us, here today, and just pulled together a compilation of all of that information that seems to be floating around out there at the moment about what people are thinking, what they're consuming, what they're liking, and parts of it are a bit lighthearted, so it's a bit of a Friday wrap too. So we'll hand over and make our way through the information.
So the panel that you have on the webinar today is Kathy Grant, who's just been speaking, Joss for media, and Chris also for digital specialist. Rochelle will chat to you around about the social things, and I'm Amanda, and I'll chat to you about some of the changing habits that we've seen at the moment going through advertising and consumer behaviour. So change being the only constant that we're faced with now. Some of the major buying changes that we've seen are, obviously we all went through the hoarding of essential goods. So that was very evident for everybody in the shops over the past few weeks. And we're also seeing a lot of changes with new hobbies coming in particular of interest or humour is that bread machine sales are up by 652%. And obviously prior to our experience with COVID-19, nobody's seen so much bread being baked in their lives in a home environment. Other things that we've changed towards as well that we're seeing significantly is home office equipment. Everything is sold out, as you can imagine, in and around office works. You can't find a mouse pad if you're trying. And we've also come up with some new hobbies, which include ping pong. Remarkably, ping pong sales have gone up 90% as we try and fill our time in our own homes. So very interesting and changing environment that we're in. And that results in obviously advertisers and marketers having to make some great changes. A couple of campaigns which are of interest and a bit of fun. Our homegrown Freedom has been obviously closing their doors for retail sales, but what they have been able to do is change their business a bit to an online experience. They've tackled the working from home challenge and actually given the consumer the option of having backgrounds specially designed from Freedom. So to make your background appear more styled. The next one on your screen now is a Guinness campaign actually coming in from the UK. Guinness themselves didn't create this, but one of their community groups did go ahead and create this and submitted it for a localized advertising promotion company. And what they've done is they've actually seen this themselves, posted it on their own Instagram, and organically driven themselves 17,000 likes just by being aware of what the community around them was doing. So very interesting for them, driving a lot of activity and humor to their own Instagram, but not something that they created. So their creative ownership is, they're having to change the way that they do business as well. And then one of the other examples of a company that's doing really well on the next slide, when Rochelle does move it across, is Nike. Now, we're all told to stay home, but we're very fortunate in that we can all go for our walks and run around the blocks and things like that. So Nike is really relevant at the moment, in that even though we're at home, we're still trying to be very fit. So they're staying top of mind by promoting their app, and also promoting their supporting people from staying home and doing their exercises at home. So they've pledged a lot of money into this corona support. They've pledged 15 million. They're giving their app free to all users, and they really are just trying to stay top of mind while we all change the way that we exercise. And again, this is an incredible use of their database. They've got a lot of people talking about it and a lot of people responding very positively to their input. So just some interesting and fun ways of looking at the way that things have changed.
So I might take you through just a couple of things with what we're calling the new normal, because we've sort of been in lockdown for a while now, and it feels like it might have some changes that are going to be effective over the longer term. So ding. So there's, look, in terms of a really broad snapshot, I guess it's been such a fundamental shift for a lot of people. It's been a sort of like almost quantum, in that it's touched almost every part of their life. So we really haven't seen anything like this probably since sort of the Second World War, in terms of the impact it's had across all parts of the community and across the globe. So, you know, there's some pillars here, but it's obviously broader than that. But we're seeing things like community, and it means a lot of different things. So it's the community you work with, it's the community you care about, and that's why you're staying at home. It's the community being your family, and we're seeing people probably spending more time FaceTime with family than they did before, in a strange way. Then there's also balance, and that's balance, you know, we've talked a long time about that work-life balance, and people have all of a sudden sort of got a lot more scope to control that to a larger degree. But it's also that balance, particularly originally, of that fear that people felt, and also the hope. So there was this balancing going on in terms of, I'm not sure how to feel about this, and I don't want to be worried, but should I be concerned? Anyway, I think we're kind of seeing the other side of that, but that was certainly a big player early on. And then we talked about the bread makers, and this whole self-sufficiency thing has just gone off steam. I mean, I think I went into Bunnings pretty early on, and just to try and buy a seedling was completely out of the picture. It was like a couple of limp-looking lettuces, and that was about it. So, you know, I think that's actually quite a positive in the fact that we're all seeing that it's quite handy and useful to be a bit more self-sufficient, and very rewarding. So that's kind of a bit of a positive. And then, you know, I've sort of taken out of that community this idea of my tribe and caring. And I think people are, that's brought out a little bit the softer side of us, which is nice. So that idea of checking in with older people you might know in your street, making sure your family's okay, that you don't talk to all the time. All those sorts of things have come a bit to the fore at the moment. Second last one is authenticity, and this is really big, and we saw this as a massive trend generally, that people were, I suppose, a little bit nervous about all of the stuff that had been going on with fake news and with social media, and there was a huge increase before all this happened with the need for people to look for authenticity. So this is seeing that even more. And then I don't know what the last one is, because we've jumped ahead, Rochelle. The last one was curiosity. And this is actually probably worth noting too, because I think we've reached the point where everyone was like, how am I going to cope with being in ISO? And now they're looking for re-engaging with hobbies they've been interested in, doing more study, and they're now looking for humour now rather than information. So I think, you know, we're seeing that growing now as being a larger part of people's minds space. Ding.
Cool. So,
and handing over to you, Rochelle. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So we put together a bit of insights kind of following that, based on what people were looking for online, and questions people were kind of asking, just which kind of shows a bit of, I guess, how we are all in it together, and the kind of strange things that we're all thinking and feeling. And there's a huge kind of time of unknown. So just things, the top trending questions over the past week in Australia were things like, are dentists open during coronavirus? Can I go for a drive during the coronavirus? Can I get my hair cut during coronavirus? Can I visit my family? So I think it's a mix. What we're seeing is a mix of, you know, different news articles that's coming out in Australia and in New Zealand, and then people maybe unsure as to what the rules are and checking on that. So it's quite interesting as to what that's bringing up. And then worldwide, a bit of some funny searches coming in. So, you know, things around should you wipe down your groceries, and has pollution changed, which has been a big topic of conversation, from environment, people concerned about environment, looking at how we've all slowed down and what the positives are because of that. So just some interesting kind of insights to look at. Joss, I think you might be on mute.
You missed those pearls of wisdom. Oh, they'll never come. No.
Yep, try again.
Getting with the technical stuff. So in terms of marketing strategies for the moment, and these are probably our marketing strategies that are particularly relevant to the current scenario with ISO, but they're also tried and true things that have come out of previous scenarios where we've had real downturns in the economy over a period of time. So there's some correlations there that I think are probably relevant and that we have got some really good knowledge about too. So for the current thing, I suppose some of the more urgent stuff, if you haven't already done it, as a bit of a checklist, is just to make sure that you're preempting any customer questions that might be out there. So to make sure that things like, how people can interact with you is updated on your Google Maps and your website so that they know you're still open, and how they can do business with you. And if you've got something that's of benefit to them in terms of how you're operating, that's really front and center when they're looking for that information. So that's the outside world. In the inside world, I think it's also really important that your staff understand what the journey is for the business so that they all feel like they're part of one team and traveling together. And one of the nice things I think about ISO too is that there's sort of like this shared burden that we're all carrying. So I think for businesses, it's actually a time where they can more than ever actually ask favours of their team, and everybody will be wanting to help to get out the other side. And, being honest with them that there's an unknown out there that everybody's dealing with, and that you're all coping. So the other benefit of that is if the staff know how, you're talking to them, then they will also know how to talk externally as well. So anyone who talks to them about the business, they'll all be, on point in that sort of political kind of language. So that's the staff. In terms of product and services, obviously there's a whole lot of stuff that can't happen, but maybe there's new things that can. So is it a chance to reframe, retool, reorganise? I have a group that I follow, which is a gin making company in the Yarra Valley, and they make 4 Pillars gin. They make a gorgeous gin, which we're probably drinking a lot of as well, but they also used to use the beginnings and the endings of the gin process to clean down the equipment because it was basically just a pure alcohol, and they've now sold that as a hand sanitizer. First load walked out the door and was sold before they knew what to do with, so they're already on to lot 2. So that's just people thinking about what they're doing and how they can actually be of benefit, and using that in a marketing sense, working really well. And then finally, in terms of how you market yourself, your message is out to the world. It's what you say, the tone of voice you use, making sure that it recognises where we are but isn't different to what your brand is really all about. And also in terms of your marketing, what media channels you're going. Are you taking advantage of where people are spending all of their media time, and also those sources perhaps that are a bit more trusted, to make sure that, if you are spending marketing dollars, they're going as far as they can. So that's a bit of a checklist. And then in terms of some key principles for those marketing messages, I'd say if you can make sure that there's 2 things that you're bearing in mind at the moment. One is that you're outward looking, because I think nobody wants to see a business that feels sorry for itself or says, I really need you to help me. I think they want you to recognise that you're doing a benefit for them. Otherwise, they're not going to listen. But having said that, you also need to be true to your DNA. So there's no point if you are a fun-loving brand to all of a sudden be deadly serious. I think you need to be sticking with your principles in terms of why you are a business and how you are different in terms of your marketing communications as well. So we've got a couple of examples here of brands who turned it around pretty quickly and got there in market. So I don't know, Rochelle, hopefully these links will work through to YouTube. So the first is for Glen 20, and they got this to market quite quickly, and it's a good example, I think, in terms of being on brand. And
Glen 20 has been helping to protect Aussies for generations, but we're not the only ones. Meals on Wheels protect our most vulnerable every day. You see, they're much more than just food delivery. They offer wellness support and a connection to the community. an invaluable service that's needed now more than ever. So to help them protect the people who need them, we're offering our support. And we're asking for your support too.
We'll just jump out of here. One second.
Mute. So, Michelle, we might need to go back. Yeah, excellent. So that's just a nice example and quite an obvious one. At the other end of the spectrum, you have, oh, sorry, back up, yep. Michelle, you have the likes of the banking institutions who are a bit, you know, probably maligned and hated at the best of times. So, you know, it's not easy for them to find that balance in terms of what they do. But I think this Suncorp example was really on point in terms of where they were sending their money. And we'll come back to a second example, which shows how it is quite true to what they've been doing for a long time.
These times are strange, like never before. So we're all doing our part. We're staying indoors. Our schools are different. The classrooms are quiet, but learning's still happening if you know where to find it. We're quick to adapt. We're moving online. But we have to be careful to leave no one behind. To keep kids connected and moving ahead, we're giving them access to the internet. Suncorp is providing $1 million to the Smith family to support online learning at home. Visit thesmithfamily.com.au to learn more. That's the Suncorp spirit.
And so, Rochelle, we might also just go back and play the second Suncorp example, because I think one of the things they have in their benefit is that this isn't just a campaign they've made up now to look like good citizens. It's actually part of an ongoing sort of investment that they have in local communities. So they choose these local communities to really support. So the Smith family was a community for them. And this second commercial they did a while ago was a different community. It was the Townsville Floods. And not a dry eye in the
Bracing yourself for the wet weather. Straight away. Hi. They've had 140 millimetres in the last 24 hours. Oh. Let's get this set up. Hi. Who's that? We've had a lot of people through. After Townsville flooded, Barbara and the team were some of the first on the ground, lodging claims and getting people's lives back on track. That's the Suncorp spirit.
So, yeah, I think one of the reasons that they can do it is they have invested in that sort of messaging for a while. So, yeah, that's just a couple of really good examples of brands that are following those two key principles well. The next point we wanted to make, and this is talking more to those general times where you've had a real downturn in the economy for a prolonged period. So there's been studies by Kantar and Nielsen, and invariably what they show is if you can maintain your marketing spend during these tough times, you'll reap the rewards well and truly over the investment over the medium term. And the main reasons for it are really about market share. So it's this idea of how much brain space you're getting compared to your competitors. And if you spend a certain amount, you know, you might have 10% of the spend and 10% of the market share. If you continue to spend in these times of downturn, that same spend might actually be 25 or 30% of the marketing of that competitive set. So all of a sudden you've got 3 times the market share and that brain space that people have in terms of that category and where your brand sits in it. So yeah, there's numerous studies that just show how that holds, and you know, gets very technical in that chart, but that's it's just, you know, one of the many studies that's out there. And the other big benefit of marketing in a time like this is that you just get so much more value for your money, because the advertising market is soft and quiet at the moment. So the deals that are out there are phenomenal, and the audiences are really big in particular areas especially. So yeah, really good reason if you can to keep marketing. Yeah. So there it is. So the big 3 reasons are you get big discounts because the market's quiet and they're going to look after you like there's no tomorrow. The second is you get that higher share of voice, which is just, you know, how much of the advertising you are taking up compared to your competitors. And finally, the fact that there are bigger audiences out there, particularly in some channels, which is the next section we want to talk to. So in terms of changing media panels, we've looked just at a couple of the key big areas, and TV, not surprisingly, went through a huge resurgence and renaissance. So the likes of MasterChef have been loving it, as originally did the news. And we've seen the news and everything else flatten off a little bit, but I think people returned to the television because they had more spare time, and it was a shared experience with the family. So you can see there over the weeks how that sort of peaked towards, I'd say that was sort of the middle of April is where we saw the peak, and now we're seeing it flatten off again. But that's all through the day. We saw really big lifts in terms of TV viewing. And that's, the reversing of a trend that's been going on for the last 10 years. So sort of like a 20% lift was quite phenomenal. So that's the free-to-air TV, 7, 9 and 10. And then in terms of the BVOD, which is that broadcast video on demand, or for the rest of us, iView 7 plus, 9 now, and 10, whatever it is, on demand. That's that stuff. So you're basically watching it at your own time, your own programming. And so you can see that there's been a huge increase there in terms of people watching that sort of catch-up programming. And that, again, is moved from being more news and informational to much more entertainment and comedy and light and entertainment stuff. And then outside of that, it's been a bit of a mixed bag. So we've got the likes of News Corp, who are obviously have their heritage on the newspaper side, and they've seen a massive increase in readership, and that's been primarily on the digital front, across both their people just tuning in for the odd story and also actually people subscribing. On the other side, they've also had the local paper, which in Melbourne is Leader. I think it might be Quest in Brisbane. I can't think of them in every state, but a lot of those have been paused. So they're not happening at all. And we're also seeing that, News Corp is lucky that they've got a foot in every camp, because it started off being a lot of people checking in on the news, but now they're going into Delicious to check recipes, and Kids Spot for things to do with the kids. So they've got that broad spectrum of lots of things on offer. So News Corp has had a really big win overall through this time. In terms of the big losers, cinema advertising has obviously basically shut its doors, which we'll see when that comes back and when that comes back in numbers. Roadside billboards are obviously out there, but with the traffic so much lower, their value equation is, I'd say, much lower. Stadium signage, similarly, with so little sport, they're pretty much on pause. Public transport still exists, but I would say, lower numbers, not your best value proposition. And shopping centres has gone through the curve. So initially, we wouldn't have recommended shopping centres at all, because, people were going into the shop and out as quickly as they can. Now we've seen in the last week or so that people have started to go to the shopping centre in that sort of local strip sense virtually every day. So, it is a regular way to reach people in those smaller shopping centres with those digital billboards, which is good. And then finally, we've got radio. So, terrestrial radio, which is your normal AM and FM radio stations, saw a good lift at the start, and they've pretty much maintained that for their normal stuff. And you can see through that chart there, which is a curve through the day, that even though people didn't need to get up at 6 a.m. and get in their car and drive, they really, didn't lose much in terms of those early morning audiences, and they really held them through the day. So that sort of local community voice of radio has performed really well. And then if we look at the on the next slide with the digital side of radio, there's been a huge increase. So this is comparing March, the full month of March, to the full month of Feb. And with Southern Cross Austereo, who have got, one of the larger platforms with Triple M and Hit and all of their other digital radio stations. So in terms of streams, in terms of listening hours, and in terms of listeners, they've had massive increases across the board with that digital audio as well. So that's possibly a changing habit that we'll see carry on into the future as well. Now people are familiar with the apps of streaming. And
cool. And we just wanted to highlight some trends across kind of what we're seeing on digital and social media. So there's quite a lot of interesting things, and I'm sure, your user habits and how often you're on your phone and how much kind of media you're consuming has probably increased. I know mine has. It was already big enough beforehand. So myself and Chris, who's on here as well, we both look after social and digital media for our clients. And yeah, we've seen a lot of interesting changes. So I put at the top, because we were on Zoom, so I thought I'd mention it, is that, you know, we saw a massive surgence initially of people wanting to use these video platforms and using video in general. But we're already starting to see a bit of a backlash of people getting tired of video and tired of kind of logging on every day. So it's interesting. One of the big shifts that's happened at the moment is the move to live. So with Facebook and Instagram, they've had live streaming available for quite a while now. But they've seen a massive uplift in people taking advantage of it. So, you know, if you've signed up to your gym or meditation studios, which we've been doing, we've seen businesses take their training online. We've got people hosting events, especially musicians, because everyone's craving, you know, that music and those live entertainment, which we can't do. So everyone's kind of adapted to this live and being okay with, as we're doing now, kind of talking out to the world, and everyone's becoming a bit more comfortable with that, which is which is a nice shift. We wanted to mention TikTok because up until recently we haven't yet offered it as a service at GDJ, but it's very much something that we're across and we've been using, but now the whole world is using it. Now people that aren't just 13 to 17 are using it. You've got your grandparents on it. You've got, you know, we've got friends and colleagues that are doing dance videos and dance competitions. So that shift to people just wanting some really light relief and a bit of fun, because it's video. It's easy to watch, and most of it is just you know, humor, comedy based, and a bit of light entertainment. In terms of reduced CPM, so as Joss mentioned, the costs for advertising gone down. In a digital and online sense, you know, the cost for 1,000 people to watch a video or see one of your ads is massively dropped because less people are advertising, but more people are online. So it's just interesting that, you know, really, even though there's the worry about spending right now, the cost to do it over time is just going to be a lot more beneficial as a business. LinkedIn have brought in what Facebook have been doing for a while, which are called conversation ads. So they're encouraging that one-to-one discussion and encouraging, a lot of people are moving towards the personal conversation instead of one-to-all. So they want a message in their inbox rather than, you know, an ad that they might just scroll past on the news feed. So that there's a shift happening there, and the social platforms are kind of trying to adapt. I was reading this morning actually an article about the influencer industry and how that authority and trust has really declined. So that's something we're seeing where, you know, the influencer industry has boomed for a long time. But I think at the moment, people are now looking more towards their friends and family and that real true sense of connection that you just don't get so much from influencers. So there's an interesting shift happening there. Surprisingly, one of the things that I was actually interested by is the drop in mobile usage is up overall, but in terms of Facebook, Netflix and YouTube, more people are jumping on their desktop than they were before because they're home. So more people are seeing these, you know, your ads and your videos in full screen and bigger modes. So a lot more people are engaged and spending longer time there. We're seeing a drop in COVID-19, you know, the interest in COVID-19 content. Initially, there was a massive surgence and everyone watching the news and reading every single article they could see. And now we've got, you know, we're seeing people blocking ads from advertisers that are advertising about content. We're seeing, you know, people really just looking for some lighthearted, positive and entertainment articles. There was, I guess, in terms of Facebook and Instagram and all the other platforms, there was a drop in ad spend. So obviously with marketers and businesses worried about money, people have stopped advertising as much. And they're looking at new ways of using content and creating organic content that's more helpful and engaging as well, which people are really craving. They really want things to read and things to do to be served to them online. So that kind of leads into the next point, which is about brand building and telling your story, which Joss touched on earlier, is about being authentic to who you are as a business. We've kind of been in the shift from, you know, going through the stage of unknown for a while now, and people are now going back to their original, I guess, brand and saying, who are we? How do we tell our story better? We've got time. So that's really what we're focusing on now. And for businesses, they're focusing on refining their brand story and, you know, getting content out there that really reflects who they are and can be helpful to their consumers. And then I guess the final one is Facebook launched Messenger Rooms. So if you are sick of using Zoom or you want to try something else, Messenger Rooms is a new platform that's going to come out in a little while by Facebook. They're trying to compete with Zoom, who knows? Everyone has their preference. So just interesting to see how everyone's adapting across all of this. Something we wanted to touch on, and some of you might be aware of these and some not so, but I guess one of the positive benefits of, you know, all this change and people needing help and businesses really having a hard time is that we've got Google and Facebook and a lot of other companies coming out and launching grants and ad credits that people can apply for. With Google, you have to have been advertising for 12 months or more already, and you'll automatically get the grant in your ad account. With Facebook, you can apply. So if you jump on that link after this, you can apply, and they've just started releasing them in the US, so it should be out in Australia soon. And the City of Melbourne, I think they were pretty full on their applications, but they've launched some grants, and I know a whole lot of other municipalities have been launching them as well. So there's a lot of options there where I guess people are trying to help each other advertise and kind of carry on as much as they can.
And if anyone would like some support with that, yeah, look, I think the Google one, you need to have been an advertiser, but with the other ones, you know, that yeah, we'd be happy to help with that.
Cool. So I guess just to recap as to what we've talked about is there's kind of 4 things that we're talking to at the moment. One is to just take some time, if you can, to do a bit of an audit of where you're at as a business. To focus on your marketing if you can. You know, a lot of what you can do is doesn't always have to be the paid advertising from the start. You can review your content on your website. You can review what's going in your emails that you're sending out to customers. A lot of that owned content and owned advertising, you know, is important to spend time on right now. Trusted channels as well. So just, I guess, using platforms that yeah, that you're comfortable with and people were on, and then engaging with humor. And it seems odd to be saying it, I guess, in a time like this, but people are really craving humor and a little bit of fun. You know, we're all going through a very similar experience of unknown, and I think everyone just wants some relatable, you know, human contact. It's okay to have a laugh. So I think if you can, if your business allows, you know, try and tie that in, try and be relatable and human in your approach.
And I realise we've got yet another acronym in there, so apologies, we love them, but WIFM is what's in it for me. So that's that idea of making sure if you're marketing that you're telling, you know, the viewer what the message, why the message is relevant to them and what the benefit is to them. So yeah, so WIFM.
Yeah, cool. And this was, I think, Joss is fine, but so I might let her talk to it, but it was something that you can go and read afterwards. And Readly just launched in Australia and New Zealand. The first month is $1, is that correct? Yeah. And you get nearly 5,000 magazine titles to choose from. So if you have time and you want something to read, yeah, there's some real, really good deals going at the moment for everyone trying to get, you know, entertainment out to people.
Yeah. And look, if you like hydroponics or if you like archery, or, I mean, there'll be a magazine for everything. So it strikes me, if you're a bit of a reader, that it's a good value.
Cool. So I guess we can open it up if there are any questions that have come up or come through. If anyone has any questions, feel free to send them through. We can answer them, or I'm sure they can be passed through after this and we can get back to the people who have them.
Thank you. Thank you to the team at GDJ. What a wonderful overview of where things are at the moment and what's happening. And as they said, if you've got any questions, by all means, stay online and use the Q&A function. But if you want to drop off, you know, nice to have you on side with us today. And as the team from GDJ said, if you've got any specific needs, by all means reach out in terms of, you know, some of those, you know, Google or social discount regimes or other things in relation to your media. But thanks everyone for joining us today, and I hope you found some value in the content that we've shared.
Bye.
Right. Thanks, Rob.